Childhood is a crucial stage in a person's life. It is a formative period that lays the foundation for our future selves. So can your childhood impact your adult life? To answer this question, we've got clinical psychologist Lindile Mbata on the couch. Welcome to Afternoon Express.
Thank you for having me, Z.
So can it?
Definitely. Yeah, that's the short answer, definitely. I mean, as you said, our childhoods really are laying a foundation for who we are going to become as people. Yeah. And if you think about that, so much of it happens inside the home, outside of the home. We're learning how to be as human beings. So we are being shaped all the time by people around us, by things that are happening to us. And in essence, I think a lot of things that happen in childhood later on inform, the sort of adults that we become.
One of my favorite quotes is, let's raise children that don't have to recover from their childhood, which is so powerful and profound. But the reality is as well that parenting doesn't come with a blueprint, does it? So it's so easy to get it wrong. What are some of the crucial impacts that children go through that can impact them later on in adult life?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of disturbances that can happen, to a child's development when they are much younger. And as I said, some of these can happen within the home and sometimes outside of the home. In the home, a child can experience a lot of difficulties, not just because things are directly happening to them, but also indirectly as a result of disturbances at home.
So the environment.
Yes, the environment. So things like marital distress, fighting all the time in front of the child, or a child witnessing violence in the home. And sometimes even just being neglected, when you don't have your emotions attended to or soothed adequately, consistently, because it's not just, having it done now and then, but that consistent care and love and attention that we get. So there's a lot, that goes into the parenting aspect that also corresponds with how well our brains develop and how emotionally we form as people.
Slee, I'd love to ask you as a parent yourself, how does one garner awareness in trying to make sure that you are solidifying a strong foundation for your child so that they're not spending their adult years in and out of therapy?
Sure. I mean, that's a tough one, because you can't always foresee these things coming. But I think, for one, as much as you can, really being able to attend to, okay, what are the developmental needs? That I'm not just attending to what are the physical needs of my child, that they are fed, they're clothed and housed, and then that's it. But to actually be paying attention to those things that also affect the development of the child. So anything that heightens the child's anxiety, pay attention to that. Anything that disturbs their emotional regulation, pay attention to that. Anything that is causing nightmares, loss of sleep. It might sound kind of small to us, but, for a growing child, it might actually be a really, really big deal. So anything that is happening socially, because that is also the world that they are growing in and developing in, those social things, the friendships they're building, whether your child is withdrawn or not, how much they're engaging. There's all these seemingly, I think, little things, but it's just a matter of paying attention and seeing, okay, does this seem like a child who also wants to be a child, who kind of wants to engage in the way that other children are engaging, or do they seem a little bit, sort of withdrawn and somber, and just paying attention to those little things.
I love that. Once again, it's about cultivating that awareness, right? Being able to slow down and take note that a recurring nightmare, for example, is not just a nightmare. So to start looking out for the patterns. I'd love to ask you this. I've read that anxiety is very much linked to the mother in the home. Is that true?
Sure. I mean, it's not just mothers, who struggle with anxiety. Definitely dads as well. I've seen that.
Children feed off that and they become anxious children. How does one look out for that?
Yeah, well, the thing about anxiety, unlike maybe some of the other things, is that anxiety is definitely one of the things that we can trace back to environment. And how an environment facilitates a feeling of safety, or how much it heightens the feeling of danger. So if you by nature are quite an anxious person, as a parent, it's very important that you learn to deal with your own anxieties and you're not passing those on to your children, and almost making them too aware of the ways in which the world can be dangerous. So it's somewhat striking a balance in that they need to learn, of course, that there are dangers out there. But, you know, if they are worried all the time about the marks that I'm getting because they get, you know, that's not good enough. If they're worrying all the time about how they look because there's a fixation on their body and they should eat, you know, more of this food, less of that food. So things like this can start to really generate a sense of angst in a young growing person because they are really struggling all the time to just feel secure and safe and happy in the world. They're questioning themselves all the time. So really avoiding as much as possible, you know, looking for all those things to kind of fix in a child, and rather focusing on what they're really good at and praising them when they actually do things to the best of their ability.
Yes, that positive affirmation. I love what you said about if your environment will either affirm whether you are secure or insecure. Thank you always for your pearls of wisdom. Although every person has their own way of showing love and care, parents have the responsibility to make deliberate decisions about the environment that they create for their children. Stay tuned because later on, Slee will give us some advice on how to deal with our childhood traumas.